Yeah, thank you. Good evening. This is the East Aurora Union Free School District Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to enter executive session to discuss matters relating to the employment history of 5 employees, matters relating to 2 particular employees, matters relating to negotiations with the EAAA, and matters relating to 2 particular corporations. Moved by Mr. Cassidy, second by Mrs. Daniel. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 5-0. Thank you. Right. Thank you, folks, for your patience. Thank you very much for your patience. We are returning from executive session where we discussed matters relating to the employment history of 5 employees, matters relating to 2 particular employees, matters relating to negotiations with the EAAA, and matters relating to 2 particular corporations. Are there any agenda changes tonight? Item 5. Item 7, superintendent's comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with the board, and I think some of the board members were there. Thank you for attending. Solana, Rhoda, Mr. Cassidy was there. So thanks for joining us. I want to thank Mrs. Brown, our wellness coordinator, Ms. Lyons, and Mrs. Swinich for coordinating the events of the day. I got to say, it was really fantastic. It was just from beginning to end, lots of positive response from our staff members. All the staff members attend, all the teachers, administrators, buildings and grounds secretary, the support staff. We're all there, and there's a focus on just a variety of wellness activities, and it just went out without a hitch. And again, really positive feedback on the offerings, so well done. And grateful to people on our staff that present. So a lot of our staff members do activities with the rest of the staff members. And so I just wanted to say thank you. I think it's really important this time of year, things are crazy and stressful. To have a day like that to just remind us about just taking a deep breath and trying to clear our minds and the importance of team and working together and what we're doing for kids. It's just a really good and important day. So thank you everyone for making that happen.
Board presidents and board member comments. The policy committee, the budget and finance committee meeting was yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Brunson, for filling in. Mr. Blauer's going to be there. Ms. Danny was there, and we'll have the report of the budget presentation later in the meeting.
Only just in response to thank you for inviting us to the Wellness Day. It was very, very tightly run, and I loved that. And it was also just really nice to interact with the faculty and staff in a not faculty and staff way, in a face-to-face. So thank you for that.
I concur to what you said. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that Mrs. Daniel and I attended the work safety meeting, which was a special meeting to go over the workplace violence prevention program. And we just kind of went through it and went through what the next steps are, etc. That's about it.
Can I just comment on Dr. Improta's comment about some of the activities? I took the stretching class, and so it's about just stretching and just kind of releasing the body. And it was so good that at one point I stretched to one side and I fell asleep. So it was. I really enjoyed it as well. So
You didn't take the self-defense?
no, I did not. I probably should.
I did. Awesome. I went home and taught my daughters. Nice.
That's right.
Mr. Brunson?
Well, as you mentioned, I attended the Finance and Budget Committee meeting yesterday, and I just want to thank Ms. George for providing us with really good backup information to help us to understand the dilemma that this budget provides. And I think later in the meeting, you'll see several options that will be presented to deal with the issues. And I'm very optimistic about our being able to have a good balanced budget on time. Thank you.
Daniel?
No, I'm other than echoing what Mr. Brunson said to Ms. George for having all of that information prepared for us. didn't say thank you.
Any administrator comments tonight? Thank you all. Yes, Mr.
I
Lycra.
wanted to quickly just point out, if you haven't seen it yet, the cafeteria got a little bit of a facelift. So in the past few months, quite a few of our team members plus the VSP graphic group put together a really nice mural on the wall along with a backlit sign. And the mural, I think it captures East Aurora. There's a lot of the landmarks throughout the village and the community, and a lot of familiar places, including our school buildings. So I think it's really added touch. The kids came back after break. It was completed while they were gone, so the kids really love it. It's really enhanced that space in there, so it's made our lunch atmosphere a little bit more vibrant. So stop down and see it if you have time.
Fantastic, thank you for the
Mr. Lambert,
invitation.
who did it? It's really quite a professional job.
They have amazing staff over there, and there was a lot of back and forth, but the one graphic designer over there was able to take,
Over where? Pardon?
VSP Graphic Group over
Thank
in
you.
Elma.
Okay.
And their graphic designer was able to take the photos that we had sent over that we wanted incorporated and just did a wonderful job blending them together to make it seem like one just coherent mural.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. George?
Just a clarifying, just so everyone knows, the general fund did not pay for that. That is a result of the universal feeding during COVID, and it created fund balance in the cafeteria fund, and that's how we were able to do that.
That's great. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to announce, and Mr. Russ was able to announce to our staff just this week that we are rolling out a new unified communication system for our staff and students. It is going to be called Rooms, and it will be replacing Remind and Class Dojo and Seesaw, allowing our staff to communicate with families and with our students using one tool from pre-K all the way up through 12th grade. So our families that have multiple children in multiple schools will be able to use one tool, one location, and it's all going to be sitting in our EA app. So for anyone that already has the app on their phone, you're going to notice an enhancement to it. And for those who don't, we're going to encourage you to download that to your mobile device, because that will be where you can go to communicate with your teachers, get announcements, hear from the faculty, whether it be for your classes, your clubs, your extracurriculars. We had our preliminary announcement this afternoon at DCIC, and we're going to start rolling out individualized training for all of our staff before school ends so they can kick off the summer and be ready to go for September.
Fantastic, thank you, Mrs. Maizano. Thanks for the update.
I'd just like to thank Mrs. Maizano. She ran one of our wellness classes. So she did rock painting, and it was super popular. Sold out. So she had to run out and get more rocks because the therapeutic process of again, a lot of really positive feedback. Someone said to me that they couldn't believe, they're in the room right now, what a great artist they were when they painted their rock. They said, wow, I couldn't believe I did it. So this is ours.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this evening? Thank you all for being here. Moving on to community member comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? All right. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. That's why I asked you. We received 3 emails since our last meeting, 2 from Mr. Miller regarding the CBD sales in the marijuana sales in the community. One from Ms. Rogers about zero emission buses. I would just like to comment that we have policies in place on substances. There are laws in place to protect schools and students, and we certainly follow the law. Anyone else have any comments this evening? All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Moving on to item 12, reports and discussion items. We are on item A, the 2024-25 instructional calendar.
I can do that. So you, in your packets, I believe, have a copy of next year's calendar. We need something new in response. It's not on the big board, Dan. I apologize, Mr. Brunson. I'm over here. So what we've realized is in kind of creating a number of internal colors and codes, which are very helpful for us internally in terms of 10-month employees, 12-month employees, how the day is used, has only created confusion for parents at times. So this year we're going to take some feedback and do something new. You should have 2 versions of a calendar, one called School Calendar Internal and one just called School Calendar. They're the same, other than the one just called school calendar is going to be our public-facing one, and pretty much it gives the parents all the information they need to know. Long story short, when their kids have school and don't have school, and when Regents exams are, and when New York State exams are. All the rest of the coding that we do need helps us, but it only served to confuse the public. So you have two versions of the same calendar, but we have a simplified version that goes out to the public now, and the internal version tells our employees when they're working and how the days are being used. What you'll notice just on that, so I'm going to go with just the red and blue calendar, which is the parent-facing one. Again, we have the long weekend for Columbus Indigenous Peoples holiday, Thanksgiving, and the day after Thanksgiving. The winter recess goes from the 23rd, which is a Monday, all the way through Wednesday, which is the 1st. We have off the Martin Luther King Day holiday, and then new next year, the Lunar New Year falls on January 29th. That is a movable holiday, depending on where it falls, but starting next year, New York State schools can't have school on that lunar holiday, so that's what that is there. We continue to be off President's Day week, as we traditionally have, the February break or midwinter recess. March, we will have our Wellness Day again, the same weekend, St. Patrick's Day weekend, like we always do. The spring recess is tied to the Easter holiday traditionally. Next year, it's the week prior to that, but we do have no school for students the Monday following that, so traditionally Easter Monday or Dingus Day if you are of proud Polish descent. Memorial Day in May, Juneteenth, again, that new holiday that came into existence last year on the school calendar, with school ending on the Wednesday the 25th. So school will be starting on September the 5th, ending on June the 25th. And again, the only difference between the two calendars is we're only giving the parents the information they care about. This is more so that our employees know when they're working and how we're using the days. So that's why there's two this year. Okay. Joe, Mr. Cassidy.
The circles and triangle?
Right. So the circles are the start of the first and second semester, and we mark that because that's when classes change. It's the start of the second semester. The triangle is something we've been doing the last handful of years, which is where there's no school for pre-K-8 because they have parent-teacher conferences that day, but the high school does have school because they do not do parent-teacher conferences during the day that day.
And then we have the last day of school.
Last day of school, yeah. So that's the big dates are the start of the first semester, the end of the first semester, which is the start of the second semester, and then the last day of school. And all of those are clarified in that middle column of what they are. But long story short, your kids will be in school on a white day or a blue day, which is a Regents Day, and they will not be in school on a red day. That's pretty much all you need to know. Yes.
Mr. Membrane, what is a teacher contractual day?
That would be a day that we're going to have, teachers have to be on campus to meet the number of days that are in their contract, but we may not be providing professional development that day.
Okay, so we don't have one in the coming
Not
year.
the way the calendar, and the weird part of why it's a funny calendar, where some of the movable holidays fall, the addition in the last couple of years of the two new holidays, Juneteenth and Lunar New Year, and with Labor Day falling so early in September, it's just how it's worked out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment. I know our hands are tied, but I really do not like the fact that the state keeps making the regents later and later.
Yeah, we have no say in that.
Yeah, we have no say in that, but.
That and they will be rolling out, the plan is to roll out additional holidays over the upcoming handful of years as well. So the calendar is only going to get more and more complicated moving forward.
Right, and the kids are going to be in school until the beginning of July.
Well, the good news by statute law, whatever, it can't go past June 30th, but yes, you're right.
It has to be 180 days in there, so it's, yeah, there's a limit to how many new holidays.
There's only so many squares on the checkerboard
Yeah, exactly.
of what you can do
At
here.
some point, you're just rearranging the squares.
We're pretty much at that point now. Yes.
Thank you
But
very
those
much.
are things well beyond local control.
We're moving on to item B, but before we get to the budget workshop, Mr. Reddy, would you like to share?
Oh. Yes. The grid, Mr. George is not doing her report this month because, she already did it this month at our other meeting. But we're going to separate these meetings that have 2 months. She'll do her report 1 month. I'll do the grid the second meeting of that month. So the same grid you're used to seeing is here in front of you. I'm just going to super quick go over it again. Payroll, you're going to see that payroll is a bit higher than we had budgeted, but again, I'm going to show you where that money's coming from. It makes total sense. It pretty much is as us. We brought in some services in-house related to special ed and occupational therapy. Sorry, confused them all. So that did bump up the salary line and the benefit line. However, we're going to see that savings in just a second to go from there. As you continue to go down, equipment is kind of where we budgeted. Supplies are trending slightly under budget, which is very good. It's a conservative estimate. That is going to fluctuate a bit because we are getting some new furniture over at Parkdale. But again, nothing you need to worry about. We're ahead of the game now, and we might spend some of that quote-unquote savings as we move forward. Contractual, you're going to see that's where a huge under budget is. That is a number of things. Gas and electric were a lot better than we anticipated. I believe this was the first winter in Western New York history where the average temperature never got below 32 degrees. That is a significant savings when you look at our square footage. But also that's where those OT salaries that we used to contract out are now in-house. So that $300,000 is part utilities, part salaries, but some of that salaries is kind of absorbs the $50,000 up in that first row. The $7,000, you're going to see a jump there. Some of that was planned, some of that's not planned. The unplanned is we had some students who needed placements that involve us paying a tuition that we can't control and we have to pay. The other is there was some purchasing of hardware, software, and textbooks that because we had the savings and the time was right to purchase those with this money, we did. So don't worry that was a $60,000 jump. About half was outside of our control. The other half was a choice that we made based on market conditions and when to buy things and things like that. You're going to see we're spending a lot less in BOCES. Again, that's bringing in some of those special ed classes and teaching our kids here in campus, in-house, which is what we always want to do where possible. And transportation, trends positive. The only thing that may throw a wrinkle in that is spring sports tend to be very weather dependent. And so if that messes up our busing, but again, we're in a good spot with it. Long story short, all of that put together means that the money that we spend, we're about $680,000 to the good, which is a really good sign. In terms of revenue, which is the money coming in, things we can't overly control, but you're going to see property tax. That number is going to be pretty close to accurate, about $2,000. So personally, big money. In the scope of things, not so much. But state aid, conservatively, is coming in higher than we budgeted to about $75,000. Erie County sales tax, that's going to be pretty close to the final number, but that final number is about $250,000, which is a great final number when it's to the good. Other revenue, mostly interest and a couple other collection of fees and other things like that, but that's again another $500,000. FEMA funding, that is now the final payment. We didn't get everything, but we got pretty darn close, and it wasn't from lack of trying, but we're not counting on anything else coming in there. Long story short, if you put everything I said together, in terms of expenditures, we are under budget by about $680. In terms of revenue, we're about over budget by about $850, bringing us in at about $1.5 million to the good big picture. Where we are in March with not a lot of time for major curveballs to come. That's not to say those are final numbers, but it would take a pretty significant curveball to eat up all of that. So long story short, the program that the superintendent has designed and the program that you have all agreed to fund is actually going to come in under budget again. Now, Mr. Brunson, not to steal your thunder, will remind you some of that is going to be spoken for in the appropriated fund balance, and that's another conversation you have to have. But the good news is that there is room for a conversation there, and we're not backed up against the wall. The rest, federal COVID funds, the rest of that, and then I just left the, it looks like the staffing didn't print out. I apologize for that. Same as it was last month. And also just where our reserves are, because I know that's going to be a conversation as well about where to put that money. So that's the latest and the greatest on where we are budgetarily. But if I could sum it up in a tweet or X or whatever they call it now, all good news.
Are there any questions that Mr. Membredi didn't answer ahead of time? Mr. Brunson? Oh, you
Well,
got it.
just a comment or two. No particular questions. Mr. Membretti, I very much appreciate the fact that you were able to predict in March, and Ms. George working with you to predict in March these excesses in both the revenues and the expenditures. It will help us a whole lot in preparing this coming budget. As you know, for several years now, we have had a significant surplus at the end of the year. Sometimes it's because of revenues, sometimes it's because we saved some money on expenditures. Last year was almost all revenue. This year, it looks like it's going to be a balance, which is a good sign because we need to underexpend the appropriations. We need to underestimate the revenues. So this is all good news. And part of the good news is that when we talk about the budget a little later in the evening, we're going to have to talk about dealing with the budget gap. And some of the options for dealing with the budget gap are to use some of the resources that we have available to us, and in terms of reserves, in terms of fund balance, and if we decide to use additional reserves for balancing this budget, this gives us a pretty good idea that we'll be able to replace those reserves immediately once June 30th comes. So it's not dangerous risk to take to use some of the reserves, knowing full well that we're only a couple of months away from a significant surplus in the budget. So I suggest that we seriously consider taking advantage of some of the resources that we have saved by judicious planning in the past and help us to balance the budget that we have to decide next month.
Thank you. Chairman? Then we are moving on to the budget workshop.
So, well, thanks everyone for being here tonight, and we're going to kind of just go through the agenda. So again, the agenda, it's changed a little bit, but basically speaking, what we're going to look at is some of the information that we received since the last meeting. We're going to show the budget gap, but I'm going to ask everybody to kind of just hold on because it's going to look pretty startling. We have some solutions for that, and we're getting more information. Unfortunately, we did get some information that it might be 3 or 4 weeks before the governor actually comes to a final decision, but we're hopeful that it's going to go in the right direction. Yep, so here it is again. We build this, and we've done this for years now on our values and vision for the district, and it's been a really good guiding force. It really keeps us focused on our kids and what they need, our employees need to get their job. So again, the Budget Finance Committee's meeting, and we just had our meeting yesterday on the 19th. And again, we just kind of discussed the updates. We go through, as you said, Ms. George presented us with a bunch of really valuable information in regard to how we're making our decisions, especially under the conditions of not knowing what the gap will be. We're really hopeful that it's going to come through, but we still have to be kind of preparing for multiple scenarios, and that's what we're going to show you in just a minute. So here's our per pupil expenditure. You can see here, we're spending just a hair over $19,000. Erie County in general is a little bit over $20,000, and across the state it's about almost $26,000 per student. Again, why this has changed like from previous years and even previous this year is that some of the stimulus money is represented in these changes. So we spent a lot of our money up front, and I want to compliment our business office, again, special ed office, for the work that they're doing, because as we went through an audit with the state to make sure we were spending it correctly and we were filing the paperwork correctly. They gave us a big pat on the back that said we were an example for other school districts around us. So they're doing a really great job making sure that money is properly managed. So here it is, the tax levy limit calculation. We've had this up for a while, and it's the center column for 24-25. Our cap limit is 4.28. So here it is. The Senate and Assembly have come out with one House budgets for each, and I shared that with you. And here's some of the highlights. It restores the Save Harmless Foundation aid, which is a really good for all of us. It rejects the inflation calculation for foundation aid, which again is positive for school districts. And it provides for a minimum of 3% foundation aid increase in addition to the Save Harmless, and an increase in per pupil funding for pre-K, which is again, has been underfunded for the last many, many years. For us, it's been the last 3 years that we've had a program. It's been underfunded, so we're really hoping that they're gonna correct that formula as well. So reserve funding, again, we're gonna be talking about this, over the next not only several weeks, but every several months. And we have a better idea of exactly what's left to fund our reserves or our savings accounts. And so, we talked a little bit about using EBLAR, possibly using the ERS and TRS reserves. We're going to more than likely use the technology reserve. And again, that's to update devices and things like that we have to do every year. And then we have to just decide, where do we want to fund, where do we want to use it? And the one thing that I just like to continue to focus on is our capital reserve. Because, as we do capital facilities projects, we pull a considerable amount of money, but there's a lot of value to our community because those dollars, whatever we save there, we basically get back 3 to 1 when we do a facilities project, and we know that that's pretty much ongoing. Excuse me, Dan, I'm just going to sneak it.
Oh,
Excuse me for just a second. Oh, there it is. I don't know. Sorry, I shouldn't have touched it. So let's see. There you go.
Can we back up one so we
Oh, yeah,
can see
sure.
that one that was blocked?
This one, okay?
Yeah, well, from the beginning.
Oh, there were 2
There we go.
capital reserves. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Keep
Thank
that
you.
little thing that's there on the side here. Oh, thank you. There you go. Thanks.
Does not like being there.
Okay.
Really wants to purchase.
Oh, that's right, Mr. Brunson.
There were 2 capital.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I just couldn't.
Oh, yeah, so the one is the one we had to close out a couple of years ago in
Yeah.
2004, and then the new one was established in 2009.
Ryan, could you remind me again, liability?
The liability reserve, that's related to like issues, court-related issues, those types of things that we may need funding for. So here we are, the governor's state aid runs, and so we've looked at this for a number of weeks now, and this hasn't changed. The big thing for us has been the $181,000 decrease in foundation aid. Again, the research and the team have been expecting most of these aid to decrease in private access cost aid. They're decreasing because we're bringing a lot of those programs back. So we're using less services, so we get less aid. It kind of goes hand in hand. So those weren't really a surprise. It was just the foundation aid that was a surprise for us. Proposed revenues, so here we go. We're going to look at the property levy increase is about $1,112,000. Again, we're losing a little bit of state aid, both without and with building aid, and those again were kind of expected. Appropriated fund balance, again, we were originally looking at decreasing it, but in just a minute, I'm going to actually talk about using more of the appropriated fund balance because of our current situation. But that's where we started. So our revenue budget was about $877,104 in terms of the difference between 2324 and 2425. And then we look at our appropriations, where are we spending our money, our expenses. Again, we look at salaries and fringe benefits. That's always at the top of the list. You can see those increases. You can see a really big decrease in BOCES, and that's Mr. Manberti was kind of referring to before as well. As we move those services in and out of the district, we brought OT services back in. So we used to work with a service provider for OT, so we cut that service. Now we're bringing it in, so those salaries adjust. But overall, we're saving almost $600,000 in BOCES costs, which is very significant. But you can see between this budget of additional revenues of $877,104 and appropriation increase of $1,342,542. It shows what the gap is, which is $465,438, which is down from the $700,000 plus gap that we had the last meeting, but you can still see it's quite significant. But we have a couple scenarios that I'm going to show you right now to share with the board and get your feedback to say how we're going to close that 465. So the first scenario is kind of like what we're hoping for. Option A. We have projected gap right now is $465,438. We're hoping to get that restoration of the foundation aid, which we're really hopeful will happen, and also the additional 3%. So that's about another $52,000. When I said we were going to try to reduce our appropriated fund balance, but because of our situation with our transportation costs going up so significantly, we really feel that it's appropriate to adjust that and increase our appropriated fund balance by $200,000. And that leaves us with an additional reduction of current appropriations of $32,472 to balance that 465. So after we do these adjustments of 180, 52,000, and 200,000, it still leaves 32,000. And there's one way to do that is we go back into the budget and we cut out $32,000 worth of things. It could be supplies, it could be services, whatever it may be. But that brings us down to a gap of $0. So that's kind of the best case scenario, and actually the scenario that we think is going to happen. So the next scenario is basically the same, except for the second line from the bottom, we could use additional reserves to close that $32,472. So that's the only difference between slide 1 and 2. So again, hopeful this is going to happen. It's just that $32,000. Cut it out of our budget and reduce things across the board, or do we appropriate additional reserves to make that come to zero? So now we look at scenarios that aren't quite as good. So say we don't get the 3% increase in our foundation aid. So now that leaves a balance of $84,472. And so there we go. So do we use additional reserves and or reduce current appropriations? So what kind of combination does that make sense to come up with the $84,472? And then in the last situation, this is the worst case scenario where we don't get the $180,000 for the 3% increase. It leaves us with a continued a deficit of $265,438. And again, we would have to say, how are we going to come up with that? Are we going to appropriate more money? Are we going to appropriate more reserves? Or are we going to go back into the budget and make some cuts to balance that out? So the one thing that is not included in any of these is still the one piece, like I kind of took it off, like, we start off with, this is what we're hoping for, these are our discussions, our needs and the things we would like to have. The one thing that's still out there is the building-based subs. So the 3 building-based subs are not included in this, and that's about somewhere around $250,000 to $270,000. So that's another piece that we have to consider. And so this is what it looks like. There you go. So 3 of them would be $216,510. 2, 1.5, 1. You can see we can pick bits and pieces up. If we can't get all 3, 1 for each building, do we do some kind of sharing between the 3 buildings? What will that look like to make it happen? So these are the numbers that we're thinking about because we know that that's a really important piece for our buildings, kind of just the day-to-day functioning, because there's so many moving parts and pieces. Having that sub has been really, really helpful.
And I'll just nuance that there's another sheet in your packet because the question raised last time. If, for example, we took the building subs and we filled them with just per diem subs, that's going to be somewhere between 80 and 85,000. So of these, I can see the graph. Yeah, of those numbers there, 80 to 85,000. If we're able to find per diem subs, we're spending anyways. So that does kind of just come into play there.
Well, that's a good point, because if we have to increase appropriations to cover 3 building level subs like we have now, we don't have to increase it 216,000 because we've already got 83,000. So it's more like 130,000 that you'd have to increase it.
But the only thing is, it's so hard for us to find the per diem subs. So maybe it's like so we can't find 3 subs every day. That's why we're having the building subs. So it would probably be more like maybe half of the savings. So they are there half the time they're available. So that's so the expense that we would spend on 3 subs, if we can get them here, would be 88,000. But it's unlikely because of just the nature of that.
And I did not increase the per diem sub line either yet, so it wouldn't necessarily exactly work
So
that
you
way.
might have to put, if we don't go with the 216, you might have to increase the appropriations anyway by 83,000.
If we planned to do
Well,
this.
you have to hope that you're going to be able to get a sub when a teacher is out. So you have to have enough money to be able to do that.
So
And-
that's not in the budget right now, that.
There is a line for per diem subs, and I increased it a little bit, but I didn't, based on usage this year. But that does not include increasing it for the 3
Okay.
building level subs.
From a practical point of view,
Right.
you have to, if
Right.
those positions are eliminated. It's also, I think we should call a spade a spade. This is a staff cut. It's an elimination of a program. So we have to, if we're gonna do this, we have to bite the bullet and say that's what we're doing. I don't recommend it.
I mean, but that was our intention. As we were going through the restoration of the federal dollars from all the grants, we said the one thing we wouldn't be able to maintain were the building subs. So we had that conversation with the principals over the last couple of years because we knew the 250,000.
The educational, like, just the quality of education point of view, this is, having the building subs has been valuable to the students and to the administration, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a really, because, so the building based sub does a lot of things. Like, so say for instance, like, we were building based sub actually then, so it's really nice that they could step in there and be here every day. And then we had to come back, and then we fill it in another way.
Sheet in their packet that
Yeah.
explains all that.
Yeah. And so, there's no question it's valuable, and it's also valuable to the kids because the subs here every day. You get to know the person, they're around, and they're great people. Yeah, same.
Ms. George, could you just, I'm sorry, just going back to what we were just talking about, I know you said you increased it slightly, that the per diem subs, I'm just trying to get what the number would be, because we're saying it's 216 or it's 83,000, but if we already have something built into the budget, wouldn't we be subtracting that from the 216? You see what I'm saying? No.
I do see what you're saying, but no, it would not work that way. So I did a trend over the past 3-5 years
Okay.
of what we were using for per diem subs. The building-based subs are over here. Based on that trend of use for per diem subs, I increased the budget based on that. So we would have to increase the budget either by the 83,000 under per diem,
Okay.
or,
The 215 or 216.
correct,
Or whatever the other options are that we have here also, the 2 subs or the, right, some combination.
So
Okay, thank you.
There's a quiet gap
Right.
still.
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, because as George is saying, our sub needs change year to year. And so when she looks at the trend, she say, okay, we're seeing it trending up. I'm gonna build $30,000 more into the budget just to cover our day-to-day expenses.
correct.
Can we possibly, oh, sorry, did
Yeah.
you have more? Can we possibly talk about the long-term implications of the scenarios?
Sure.
Can you talk us through?
Yeah, so let's just see, I'll get through this,
Oh,
and then you want me to just go through the rest of it,
Yes,
and then we'll
please.
come back? Okay. The capital outlay, again, doing these annually, and it's been really helpful, like right now, we're doing the pavement on the side road at Parkdale, which is in really rough shape, and the capital outlay had allowed us to do it. And really hopeful that he's gonna get it done over the break, and so it won't disturb traffic flow, so keep our fingers crossed, but that's this year. So next year is gonna be actually masonry work at the high school. Again, we look at brickwork, and it needs to, some grouting and those types of work just to keep it in good shape. So that's gonna be the focus for next year. And then, here it is again, some of the things we have maintained this level, building level subs, expectations for surplus, what are the expectations for funding and using reserves. We just talked all about this, same thing for the capital reserve, talked about that. And then here's our schedule, it's going quickly. We really hope that the state could come through early in April. It makes our job so much easier, because not knowing what they're going to give us, makes it really hard to put a final budget together, but that's what we're gonna have to do. Here we are today on the 20th. Next time we meet is on the 10th, and then we have to adopt the budget on the 24th. So that's really the crunch time for us. Hopefully we'll have it together for you by the 10th, and we can do final decisions and discussions. Hopefully that won't be too much on the 24th. And then it just takes off from there, and we all vote together on May 21st. So let's go back and Okay, so, right, so, your question, please.
So, as we look at the different scenarios, option A clearly helps us out the best, and that's more based on what comes from the state. As we look at the other scenarios, we're looking at adjusting the use of reserves. What is the impact of that in year
Yeah, so
2, year 3?
Right. So the chart, shows like, Mr. Bray was saying, it shows some really good news, like of the $1.5 million in terms of additional revenues and fewer expenditures. And so that's really positive, but again, many of those dollars are one-time dollars. So if we put those one-time dollars towards ongoing costs, eventually we run out of those one-time dollars. If we take 200,000 out of it, okay, then we take another 200,000, we take another 200,000. Eventually, after 200,000, it's pretty much gone. And so, but again, that happens every year. So we'll get a little bit more next year, if we underestimate revenues. But again, we have to be careful about how we use this money. We have to be very, very, very cautious. And again, there are certain, like this, for instance, our big problem this year, besides obviously the reduction from the state, is the unexpected increase in transportation. So that was, we thought it was going to be about $475,000. It came in at closer to a $300,000 increase. They kind of, they said, I think it was January that they talked to us and they said, we're running in the red. Contract's expiring. We have no way we can just roll it forward. Typically, that's what we've done in the past. We've just continued to roll them forward. But their expenses have gone up all over the place. Fuel, employment costs, insurance costs. And so they gave us a new contract with a significant increase. And so, we need to adjust to that. And so that's what we're doing. So, so we do have to kind of have a conversation about what feels comfortable and making sure that we're doing what we need to do now. And we're also being, aware of how we're planning for next year and 3-4 years down the road.
So just to remind me that, and the transportation aid, so that would come out of our budget, but then we put in to get some of that back, is that correct?
Right, so that 200,000 basically represents the funding that would be coming back to us from the state the next year, right?
You only have to provide the full amount in the first year.
Gotcha.
Because they're a year late in giving you a refund.
Right, so about 2/3 of that comes back to us, so we put out 300,000, next year 200,000 of that will come back, and then it'll continue to fund it moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's important.
Brian, relating to your comment about the reduction of current appropriations, option A versus option B, you could flip to just option B for just a second. I agree 100% that if we chose option B rather than option A, that we should not use that $32,472 for recurring expenses. I think that would be a huge mistake. But I believe in a budget that amounts to how many millions? Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I believe there's probably $32,472 in there in one-time expense, where the principal said, "Oh, gee, we really need this thing, and we're going to buy this thing and stick it here, and it's going to be great." But it doesn't mean you're going to have to buy that thing the next year or the year after that. So I would, before we jump to option A and eliminate option B from our radar, I would suggest we take out a magnifying glass and look at the line item budgets that we haven't seen yet. And I suggest you do that, not us. Thank you very much. Because I don't advocate individual board members going into the line items and saying cut this or add that. But I do advocate boards saying we'd like to know what our options are as to whether or not this could be resolved without making cuts to appropriations. Is it possible for some of those one-time expenditures to be financed through an increase in use of the reserves, especially knowing that the optimistic view is that there's going to be way more than $32,000 that we can put back in reserves June 30th to replace what we. I'm thinking back to last year. We spent 99% of the appropriations. If we had cut appropriations, a year ago or 2 years ago in preparing that budget, last year's budget, we would have been between a rock and a hard place in June. We would have been overexpending that budget. So, and we all know we can't do that, not even by $1. So I would just appreciate a careful look at the different options here, rather than jumping in, cutting appropriation.
And I think what the board could probably ask is, are any of these things going to impact students or programming?
Right.
Sure.
I think that's where we want to,
And I think
my concern would be going forward, if we get into the unfortunate place of option C and D, and we're starting to close the gap with reserves. I'm a big fan of funding the reserves, and then I'd like to save them for those times when we're in a GEA or a limited approach, but we don't have a crystal ball to how long the state's going to mess with us on foundation aid, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the year after this and the year after this, so I'm concerned about using reserves to fund the ongoing.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. That scenario D would be a disaster if we decided to use reserves for that.
Because that's kicking the can down that one road.
Well, you see in other districts that they have done similar things where they've had a lot of money in reserves, and they've said, well, we don't want to cut any programs, we don't want to lay off any people, and so they dip into that money for the salaries and fringe benefits and things like that, and that's not judicious. We've never operated from that point of view. At least not, when we've gone into reserves, we got in with our eyes wide open. Where am I going to make this decision? And here's the consequences for that decision. But this one, I think, is so doable at $32,000. I think we can avoid discussing cutting appropriation.
Yes,
Yep.
If looking at option A and looking at option C, we'll say the reduction of current appropriations. Have you had any thought as to how we'd come up with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so we're gonna have to make some assumptions going in. So if the governor doesn't have her budget ready for us, then we have to make some assumptions, right? So we do have to have a backup plan if this money doesn't come through. This one is actually where it could be. The 265 is what we have to plan for. And so we have to be in agreement that we would appropriate how many more thousands of dollars to make that cut. And then we would also say then what types of cuts would we need? Like say we want to say, okay, we're going to just cut that in half. 130,000 of additional appropriations or reserves and $130,000 of reductions. So that's what the board needs to think about. And then so what we would need to come up with is what would $130,000 in reductions look like? Would it be, and you would have to look at like cutting club, or would it, those are the types of things. It would have to be something significant that has some weight to it. So those are the types of things we would. Hopefully we won't get there.
Well, how many more meetings do we have? We've got one more, and then we have to vote.
Yes.
The following meeting. So we have to be prepared. Maybe have an extra meeting in there somewhere. If indeed your projection that it might be 3 or 4 weeks before the state makes their final determination, that meeting on the 10th may be too soon for us to be able to make the kind of determination. So you're talking about here.
George, go ahead.
I was at a business officials meeting today at Erie One BOCES, and we discussed this in length. And New York State ASBO, Association of School Business Officials, the group I belong to, feels pretty confident with the one House bills that the Save Harmless piece will go back into the budget. That's the 180. The leader of our group today was going to reach out about the 3% minimum to see if they could get more information. At this point in time, based on that meeting today, I would be comfortable adding the 180 to the state aid. Maybe between now and our next meeting, April 10th, April 6th, I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, 10.
I may have more information on that 3%. This is something that I just want the board to know that my nose is to the ground, my ear is to the ground on these types of things on a daily basis. As
You're talking about option C.
B.
Well, C is the one that has, that is restores the
Oh,
state
right,
farm
and not the
but does
52.
not restore the 3%.
Right.
So if your professional organization's prediction comes true, this is what we have to do. It could be an $84,000 gap.
Correct.
Which is a manageable.
Right, but it's not,
We started, but
it's not inclusive of the building-based subs.
Exactly.
So that 84 plus the 216 or some variation.
I think we always talk about we want to balance the budget without impacting programming, and one of the issues that's been raised throughout the year has been the issue with the building-based subs, and if you're having difficulty trying to find the subs, then that's impacting our programming. So I think that's something, personally, I feel like that's something that, if there's a way that we can get that and have the building-based subs in the budget, and looking at the information that we just got from Mr. Mambretti, it looks like it could be something that's manageable. So, but we'll have to, again, with the budget and the information from the state being held up, this just makes it challenging. We're looking at 4 scenarios, and we're supposed to know April 1st. The budget's supposed to be, right, April 1st? Yeah, so.
It's something, Kim, that I kind of giggle about
Yeah.
because the state makes all these rules, and if we happen to miss a rule, the state comptroller comes in and blasts it all over the newspaper. But the state has rules to follow, and when they break the rules,
Yeah, and it just makes it really challenging for us as we're moving forward to make these decisions. So, because that, obviously, if we're looking at option A, we're in a very different situation as we're evaluating, the building sub, than if we're looking at option D.
And I think with the building subs, we don't want to be in the same position next year.
Right.
Where we are this year, having the question about the building subs.
Right.
Well, and they're a recurring cost, so you have to try to fund that through taxes.
They ask us to pause our discussion to let people escape if they want to.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks for sticking it out.
They're always so
They're
quiet.
so,
I don't even.
well, so courteous. There
know,
have been
I
years
never
when I
even-
was board president when they were not so courteous. You must like Jesse.
My influence is waning.
So, so that's what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll work with the admin team and just kind of start, like we said, line by line, where can we find some expenses to kind of maybe eat up that 32,000? And then where will we go to try to start funding the permanent subs, seeing what we can do to pick up some monies that we can count on, or do we go into it and we can say we can fund it for another year, right? And then we'll have to try to find us another solution, for next year. That could be it. So we just go into it knowing that we'll put subs in place for this year because we found this solution. Might be great, maybe not so great, but we can do it for this year, and then we'll just have to kind of work on it and make it permanent over a period of time. So so that might be another scenario saying, hey, we can fund it for this year, but we won't necessarily be able to fund it for next year. We're going to work on it throughout the year, trying to save some additional funding, see what we can do using tax dollars. Is really the way to go. As we raise taxes, those permanent dollars are what funds permanent positions.
Through yours and Ms. George's hard work, we rolled the positions we brought in during COVID into the general fund, right? You made it happen over 3 years.
That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, so I fully believe we can do it again.
That's even the state, like I was saying, is complimenting Ms. George and the crew, just about how they were able to, slowly move that over, make it sustainable, so that we can keep those positions moving forward. We always knew that this was going to be a hard piece because it's a lot, and so, but their compliment to us was about just how we've managed it and how thorough our records are, and so really grateful to Ms. Marinaccio, and a lot of it is through her office as well, and so that part of it went very, very well.
Yeah, and stories in the paper this week and last say that not all school districts have done that, and they're paying the price right now.
Yeah.
So It's true, it's more fortunate.
And I think we've had the philosophy, at least since I've been on the board, that when we put in this programming, we want it to be something that's sustainable, and we're thoughtful when we're putting in the programming to make sure that it is something that can be sustained, because, you know, the bad, terrible situation is to put in programming and then not be able to sustain it. So,
All we have to do is remember the gap elimination years where everybody was walking around wondering if something was going to be cut, right? We don't want to be in that spot. We do want to be thoughtful and recognize there are actual humans involved here.
That's a good point, and the fact of the matter is, when you get into that scenario where you have to make those cuts, and I lived in your seat over there during those years of the gap elimination adjustment, and your decision-making is taken out of your hands, because all those cuts have to be done by seniority. And in many cases, it's seniority across multiple disciplines. So that you make a cut here and you think it's going to affect the English department, but it ends up affecting the social studies department. So it throws the whole program into a roiling cauldron that you no longer control. And so whatever we can do to prevent that from happening, that's what we need to do. I think that I'm very encouraged by the fact that both sides of the aisle in the legislature are supporting restoring these reductions that the governor has proposed, and I'm even more optimistic based on the report we've had tonight regarding our schools district's finances and how healthy we are to be able to cope with, and even if it's the 84,000, I think Ms. Danu is correct in saying that we can manage it.
Thank you. So for the next meeting, would the board see your proposal for some level of building subs or whatever you decide is appropriate, and how you close the gap in different scenarios?
We'll work on the 84, and then we'll add like different levels of substitute support in terms of the building base. 1, 2, 3. I think 3 might be enough. But, I mean, under this scenario, if we move 50,000 out, well, that almost is a big percentage of one sub. Right? If we get that extra 50,000.
And if we do end up delayed with the information for 4 weeks, can I ask board members to please have your calendars available and talk about adding a meeting in there so there is time for review and discussion before the vote on the budget?
Do we want to do that now or tonight? Get something,
We could look while there are more of us than less of us.
because we're not going to all be here.
Is everyone okay with that?
The 17th works.
Oh, yeah, we have the BOCES vote. When do we have to do that?
April 16th.
The morning meetings are trickier, but it would tie two things together. How does everyone feel about a joyful 7:30 in the morning meeting to vote on the BOCES budget and review?
Well, it wouldn't be my choice to try to do both, but if that's what everybody wants to do, I'll
And we could
my best to be here.
we could do a 7:30 in the morning meeting on the 16th and make it a quick one to do the BOCES vote. That only needs to be a quorum.
right,
We have to do it anyway.
right. And then have an evening.
And then have a meeting on does the 17th work for you, Brian?
Let me see.
This is only in case. I mean, maybe the state will get everything together and you'll.
Well, I think they will, but when?
Yeah. Well, they will get it together. Will they have it together in time?
Well, one
for-
year it was into July or August.
But we were
That was
talking
nonsense.
about one of the things too, which Governor Hochul wouldn't really want to be in that position, but if there's a supermajority in both houses, I mean, that's the other thing too. They could always override any veto that she might have if she were to say for some reason, I'm not going to restore foundation aid, because both houses have said that. So that's another thing that I don't think that will happen, because she's not going to want to look bad.
I think more likely they'll just stay in the room longer
Yeah.
negotiating
So
and.
that,
they-
you know,
Yeah, they'll
that's
just say
not-
they haven't
but
reached
they
an
have-
agreement.
Yeah, they have it
Is
seems
there
like they
any-
have the vote.
Oh, but yeah.
Is there any chance of doing it on the 16th in the evening, or no?
The evening of the 16th?
Yeah, any chance?
There's a chorus concert.
17th, or did we say that's bad?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
You're good 16th, 17th, 18th. 16th, 17th, 18th are all possibilities for me.
Yeah.
Mr. Cassidy, Mrs. Daniel? Yeah.
Mhm.
Mr. Brunson? You're out?
18th works.
Possibility. I can't promise.
Okay, so I need 4 promises, but we'd really want this to be,
I
so
can-
1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4.
Do you want to do another early morning meeting, like 2 in a row? I don't know if you want to do that.
No, thank
If that
you.
works, no.
We can if we need to, but I think if we're going to,
Yeah.
the BOCES vote will be fast.
Yeah, it's just,
So if we're,
We could, I mean, if the BOCES vote is fast and all we need is another 45 minutes to deal with this, I mean, I wouldn't object to extending that to a 1-hour meeting, that early morning meeting. But I can't spend till noon, talking, if it's a complicated issue and there's lots to talk about.
Well, I don't think it'll be too complicated, no.
I think this would be
It's straightforward.
this would be the opportunity for the board to digest the information, ask the questions, and go back to the superintendent
And then
and
you
business
vote
official
on
to
that,
come
yeah.
back with the answers so that we have the opportunity to ask those questions before we vote.
On the 21st.
I mean, we have to keep our, we're gonna have to talk less.
All right, so I withdraw my objection to extending
Promise that
that.
you're out. You could do.
On
okay,
the
so we- Mm-hmm.
16th, the 7 a.m. one?
7:30.
7:30, yeah.
I'm gonna keep it at 7.
Yeah. Better
I'm
remind
like,
me.
wait, is it 7:30? 7:30?
Except for Maria at 7.
All right, so
So let's put
7:30.
that as a tentative.
Sure.
Is that-
Well, that's,
Ms.
isn't that no
George,
matter
We already
what?
have it on there.
Oh, sorry, we have to have it anyway.
meet.
We already have it on there.
Yes.
I didn't have that.
I have it on.
Did you send
Ms.
that?
Casey, you good with making that official?
It's just been,
Didn't talk about it.
like,
On that,
to
okay.
be determined.
Ms. George, does that work for you? Thank you.
I just-
Okay, so you'll send us
16th,
16th.
17th.
It's 7:30.
Excellent.
Thank you for the idea to look at it now.
Okay, the 16th at 7:30.
So that means no matter what we're meeting, but it may be a short meeting or it may be a longer meeting, depending
Yes.
upon.
Maybe 5 minutes. Or...
Right, because it could just be the BOCES
No
and
more
then
than
it's.
I put it until 9 because
Have the information before. So we can come in.
that'll be the idea. Whatever the state allows us to do. Whatever the state allows Ms. George and Mr. Russ to do. Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts before the meeting on this time? Your work, thank you for walking us through some areas. We do not have anything on the capital facilities project this evening?
No, we're meeting tomorrow, and we just had Steve's presentation. I think he did a pretty thorough presentation of where we're at. Nothing really has happened since then, and we're meeting again tomorrow. It's just, we're talking more about details, like just promises, stuff and colors, and next. That's
Great.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see it.
Dan, are you coming to tomorrow's morning meeting?
It's on my calendar. I never really know in the morning, but I try my best.
Moving on to item 13, consensus items. Is there anyone who wishes to withdraw a specific item from the consensus agenda? Is there anyone who wants to add anything to the consensus agenda? We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Daniel. Second.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Maloney. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 6-0. On item 17. Okay. Item 18A, may I have a motion to accept the EAF grant as detailed in your agenda? This one is for empowering readers.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cassidy, seconded by Mrs. Daniel. Discussion.
I'm so excited for this one.
All the gratitude to the foundation for their continued support and creative work. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 6-0. Item B, bless you. Item B, may I have a motion to recommend the acceptance of the grant? This one is for the this is the Sustainable Ag Grant as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion? Moved by Ms. Stillweiler. Seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion?
I'll just
Well,
say-
I'm sorry.
No, you
I was
go
just going to say, it's always a pleasure since I sit in on these deliberations. It's a pleasure to hear the enthusiasm of the teachers, and they often bring students along because the student has often planned the grant application and they present it. So kudos to these particular 3 teachers in these 2 grants and their staff and their students as well.
Yeah, I can't thank the foundation enough. Again, both grants are really great. The one at Parkdale gives kids an opportunity to, earn a prize and take a book home with them out of the vending machine. Just really awesome and exciting for kids that age. Yeah, it's wonderful. It promotes reading. It's just a really great thing. And then also the ag course. I mean, it's just like taking on a life of its own. It's just incredible the amount of response we've gotten from the community. Also, there's another former student who has a foundation who is interested in making a significant donation to support the program so that it can expand to the next level. And this grant's going to let us get to that next step before that happens. So just really generous of the foundation. And I think they set up their eggs because our egg layers are hard at work right now, and they sold 35 dozen in about 3 minutes. Yeah, so they sold out just like that because at Wellness Day they sold them, and all the teachers and support staff just grabbed them. So yeah,
Where
really
did
really
they
exciting.
sell them right at the high, like
Yeah,
you
they
just
do.
go up to the high
Yeah.
school and get them?
Yeah, so they're not here today.
You
Yeah,
gotta
so
be quick.
yeah, you got to be quick. So
Oh.
when they come, they sell out really quickly because they're not quite at max production. But if you want one, just give Mr. Roberts a call. He'll
Okay.
get you the next
I
dozen.
think I've got a double connection and I haven't seen
Oh,
it
yeah,
yet.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. I usually get one. I always
Here
put
we
one on
go.
the side.
And I ate one for breakfast this
Yeah.
morning.
It's,
Oh, you had one, okay.
but yeah, there's like 5. They sell them for $5 a dozen. So it's but I mean it's great. Yeah, it's like this whole process is wonderful.
Wellness Day, Mrs. Williams, but it's no longer Mrs. Williams, came and brought her goats to Wellness Day. And it'd be great if someday we got goats.
Yeah.
Right, Mark?
She's offered.
She wants to give us the
I know.
We'll even watch it over the summer and breaks. She's interested in, yes, the expansion of our farm is.
Very impressive.
That'd be great.
Michelle-
Goat milk, goat cheese.
Oh, they're therapy goats. They're trained
Oh,
therapy
folks.
goats that she wants to
Yeah,
donate.
I heard that.
So
We have
moved.
little pouches.
We already did that part. We're in discussion. We're well into discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 6-0. Item C, may I have a motion to approve the request for proposal for transportation services from First Student as detailed in your agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cassidy,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Danu. Discussion? Thank you, Superintendent and Ms. George, for all the preparation. You had us well aware of what our potential risks were, and I'm grateful you laid it all out for us. And congrats on the more positive outcome. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 6-0. Item B, may I have a motion to approve the 2024-2025 instructional calendars as presented tonight and detailed in your, you missed it. Oh, what did I do?
Yeah. Oh, we had to do that one.
Oh, sorry, I stuck together. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I was like,
Thanks. Let's have a vote. May I have a resolution, may I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the May 21st, 2024 annual school district meeting budget vote and election? Detailed right there in the agenda. Moved by Mrs. Weiler. Second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 6-0. Thank you. Now, item B, may I have a motion to approve the 2024-2025 instructional calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Daniel. Second by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion?
Just with the adoption, it'll go public tomorrow then. A lot of folks are asking where the holidays fall, so just so you're aware.
It really is much clearer, the parent one, was just looking at it, it's excellent. What does the triangle and the oval mean?
The ovals are the first day of school, the first day of the second semester, and the last day, and those are mentioned in the middle. The triangle, if you look in the middle, that's the day that kindergarten through 8th has off for parent-teacher
I
conferences.
said that, okay.
And those are identified in that main column.
All
Yeah,
those
that's great.
important dates are in the middle.
Yeah, love it, thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 6-0. Is there any new business to come before the board? No. The upcoming workshops are listed, and now we have an additional meeting on the schedule for April 16th, 7:30 in the morning. The next regularly scheduled board meeting is Wednesday, April 10th. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn? Can you second? Second, Mr. Johnson. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Carried 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.